Hello, and welcome to Schedules podcast. My name is Minerva Goree, and today we will be talking about finding project scheduling best practices online. One of the things in project scheduling is that there is not a lot of information out there on what are scheduling best practices. To find this important information, you usually have to dig deep online and know what you're looking for. But don't worry, in this episode, we will be talking about where to find this information, who put these documents together, and what type of information you may find in these important documents. Also, I want to mention that a lot of words, phrases, and concepts I got directly from these documents, so the credit goes to everyone who created these documents. I'm just bringing these concepts to you in a way that may be easier to understand. At least that's the plan. So, what are the important information out there for project scheduling, you may be asking yourself? Today, we will concentrate on three main documents. There may be others out there, but these are fundamental and they are free to the general public. The first one is Planning and Scheduling Excellence Guide, also known with the acronym PASEG, pronounced as PASEG or PASEG. Then we have the Generally Accepted Scheduling Principles, known by the acronym GASP, pronounced GASP. Lastly, we have the Dcma 14-point assessment for project schedule health. So let's start with the first one, which is the Planning and Scheduling Excellence Guide, better known as the PASEG. At least that's how I will be pronouncing it from now on. This document was created by the National Defense Industrial Association, or NDIA. The last revision as of today was in September 2019. They seem to update this document every 2 to 3 years. This guide, created by industry and government, is geared for the program leadership team and planning and scheduling professionals to recognize the value of an integrated master schedule, or IMS. This includes understanding of scheduling concepts, promoting good scheduling processes, and realizing the consequences of poor processes. Using the PASEG document, the program team can build and maintain more robust and dynamic schedules that provide a roadmap for improved program execution. By leveraging the extensive knowledge of experienced government and industry professionals, it's a good guide that provides how-to direction or instruction for project and programs to use on their schedules. This document aims to translate scheduling policy and guidance into practical approaches for improving scheduling capabilities. By improving scheduling capabilities, then we can improve scheduling outputs. The document was written primarily for the programs working for the Department of Defense, or DoD, and the intel community. Commercial industries also can leverage this guide because it provides scheduling practices or techniques that apply to any industry. Keep in mind that the primary focus is on scheduling for large programs with high technical, schedule, and cost risks. These projects and programs stand to gain the most return on investment when the project team dedicates the proper skills, resources, and time to developing and maintaining excellent schedules that pay high dividends for everyone. So that means that if we develop really good, robust schedules, then the program will benefit and we will meet deadlines, or at least we will know where our bottlenecks are so we can make proper program or project management decisions. Just remember that this document is just a guide. It does not suggest that each and all of the information in this document will be useful or relevant for all schedules. You will need to use your judgment for your program team to understand what you take from this document to implement it on your projects and programs. So don't get this document and think, oh, I need to implement every single thing as it's written here. You can go ahead and choose what is that will help your programs and then implement it in a way that makes sense. So just use this as a guide. This guide is divided into 13 major sections and appendices, and they are as follows. So let's go through each one of them briefly. In the first section, you have the purpose and scope, where you get an overall view of what the IMS guide or Integrated Master Schedule Guide is for here in this guide and what it will be actually covering and why. And then in the second section, you will have the GASP or the Generally Accepted Scheduling Principles. And I have mentioned that it's a second document that you can get, but it is also embedded here in this document. So you can actually get it's a 2-for-1 in my opinion. Then you have section 3 where you understand leadership, buy-in, and commitment so that everyone that is involved in the program understands the managing of using the IMS as a tool and not just for reporting purposes. And then in section 4, you have the schedule architecture. So it talks about the schedule architecture, meaning that it explains the IMS architecture, the schedule hierarchy, and either using top-down versus bottom-up planning. And then once we have completed that, going through that section, we could see the section on standard modeling techniques, which is section 5. So in this section, section 5, it will go into deep exploration of different things for the IMS, such as maybe naming conventions, where you will see that it gives examples of how we should name tasks, how to use duration, how to use relationship and logic and apply it to your schedules, where and why you may need to use leads or lags or not use them. Also constraints, how they apply to a schedule, and also milestone summary and hammocks. So hammock task, usually in Microsoft Project, if you're using Microsoft Project, we usually don't use hammocks there because it's not an easy way to put that into a schedule. But if you're using a scheduling tool like Primavera, then there, in my understanding, is that you can use hammock task very easily. So you can see that in this section, section 5. And then level of effort, apportioned effort, and working calendars. You will also learn about how the scheduling calculation algorithm works and the options for modeling scheduling margin. Scheduling margin is something that a lot of programs forget to put into their schedules. So that's very important to know. And then you go into section 6, which is the section for cost and schedule resource integration. So this talks about the importance of having cost and schedule integrate. And it covers whether the resources are in your IMS or if you don't have it in your IMS. So it's up to your program to understand and to decide whether they keep the resources in the schedule or outside of the schedule. And then section 7 is the external schedule integration. This describes methods of incorporating external schedule information into your schedule, including an overview of sub-project or external schedule integration, interface handoff milestones, and schedule visibility tasks. So you can use different techniques to accomplish similar objectives. And then we have section 8, which is horizontal and vertical traceability. This defines and provides methods of maintaining vertical and horizontal traceability and an overview of task coding. It's a very important section. Then we move on to section 9, which is schedule maintenance. So once you have your schedule all built out and ready to go, and it is active, then you go into scheduling maintenance. This discusses status updates, including status updating to time now, or in Microsoft Project is the status date, also forecasting and estimates at complete or EAC. It covers baseline maintenance, including the baseline change management process and the rolling wave process, if that's what you're going to be using in your program or project. Then section 10 goes into schedule analysis. This covers schedule health assessments, critical and driving path analysis, schedule risk assessments or SRAs, the setup and execution of SRA analysis, and incorporating risk and opportunities in the schedule. You will also learn how to address schedule execution metrics, including critical path length index, baseline execution index or BEI, schedule performance index like SPI, duration-based versus scope-based percent complete. So in Microsoft Project, scope-based complete usually is percent work complete, but it doesn't necessarily have to be that way. Also, schedule rate chart and current execution index or CEI. Then we move on to section 11, where it has business rhythm and submittal. This includes IMS-related documentation, recommendations in the schedule supplemental guidance and desktop procedures, in addition to considerations for program schedule reviews, IMS submittals, and the IMS-related program business rhythm. Then we move on to section 12, which is training, and it covers the recommended content for the schedule or IMS-related leadership and planning and scheduling skills and training. And lastly, it has section 13, which has programs and contract phase considerations. It describes various IMS attributes by program, contract phase, such as technology, demonstration, and engineering, manufacturing, development, and an in-depth explanation of scheduling in a production environment. Those are the main sections. It also has some appendices so that you can look into that once you get that document. So we will be going over in future episodes. I will be going through each one of those sections and we'll be discussing each section to see how it applies to our schedules. Then we have the second document, which I was talking about, that is the Generally Accepted Scheduling Principles, or GASP. And in this document, you can find it as a standalone document, as I said before, or within the PASEG document. It's easiest to access to the PASEG if you already have that document, so that's good, but you can also find it by itself. The GASP principles, or the General Accepted Scheduling Principles, was also created by a committee within the NDIA, as I understand it. So the Generally Accepted Scheduling Principles consist of 8 main principles for building, maintaining, and using schedules as effective management tools. The first 5 GASP principles describe the required qualities of a valid schedule. That means that it is a schedule that provides complete, reasonable, and credible information based on realistic logic, duration, and dates. The last 3 generally accepted scheduling principles, or GASPs, reflect increased scheduling maturity that yields an effective schedule. An effective schedule provides timely and reliable data and aligns time-based resources and is built and maintained by using control and repeatable processes. So let's go over those 8 principles. So the first 5 are the valid principles, which I just explained. So the first one is complete. That means that the schedule captures the entire discrete authorized project effort from start through completion. Then we have the second principle, which is traceable. That means that the schedule logic is horizontally and vertically integrated with cross-references to key documents and tools. The third principle is that it needs to be transparent. The schedule provides visibility to assure it is complete, traceable, has document assumptions, and provides full disclosure of program status and forecast. The fourth principle is status. That means the schedule has accurate progress through the status date. Number 5 is predictive. The schedule provides meaningful critical paths and accurate forecasts for remaining work through program completion. So those are the first 5 valid principles. Then we have 3 effective principles, which is number 6 of the principles, which is usable. The schedule is an indispensable tool for timely and effective management decisions and actions. Then we have number 7, which is resourced. The schedule aligns with actual and projected resource availability. And lastly, the schedule needs to be controlled. So the schedule is built, baselined, and maintained using a stable, repeatable, and documented process. So those are the 8 principles of the generally accepted scheduling principles. The third and last document I want to talk about here is the Dcma 14-point assessment for a healthy project schedule. This document is pretty old, and from what I can find online, it was last updated around 2012 by the Defense Contract Management Agency, or Dcma. These principles have been rolled into metrics called EVAS, or Earned Value Analysis System, and then now they are part of Dcma, or Dcm, which stands for Dcma EVMS Compliance Metrics. Yes, that is all a mouthful, and you don't need to remember all of that, especially if you are just starting with trying to understand scheduling best practices. To keep it simple, we just look at the Dcma 14-point analysis. So what are the 14 points? So let's go over them quickly, just naming them, because in another episode, we will go through each one and what it means. So number 1 is logic. So your schedule needs to have predecessors and successors. Number 2 is checking for leads. It checks that you are using what may be referred to as negative lag in your task. They need to be taken out, and you need to either use different techniques to make sure that it reflects on your schedule outwardly or in different tasks, not within the predecessors and successors. And then number 3 is lags. There is a threshold of using lags. And then number 4, it checks for finish to start relationships. So usually a schedule is really good in general if it has 80% of its relationships that are finished to start. And then number 5 are hard constraints. So it checks for hard constraints. Usually we don't really want to see any hard constraints in our schedule, so that checks for that and the percentage of hard constraints. Number 6 is high float. Number 7 is negative float. Number 8 is high duration task. Usually high duration tasks are tasks that have more than 44 working days in a task as its duration. So it checks for that. And then number 9 are invalid dates. These are dates that we have actual dates, actual starts and actual finishes to tasks that are in the future or that are missing start or finish dates if they are in the past before the status date. Number 10 checks for resources. Number 11 checks for missed tasks. Number 12 checks the critical path test. Number 13 checks for critical path length index. And number 14 checks for baseline execution index. So that's it. Those are the 3 main documents to get you going with project scheduling best practices. First, we went over the PASEG, which is the Planning and Scheduling Excellence Guide, which has 13 sections. Then we learned about the document for the Generally Accepted Scheduling Principles, which are 8 principles. And lastly, we learned about the Dcma 14-point assessment, and we named each point briefly. Hopefully, you don't feel too overwhelmed with all of this information. You just need to take one step at a time. Read and review one document at a time. I would also recommend implementing one concept at a time until it all comes together to give you robust schedules that you and your whole team can trust. But don't worry, in the next episodes here at madschedules, I will be going over each of these documents in depth so we can discuss what it all means. So, see you next time. I am your host, Minerva Goree.